Thank you for joining me and taking the time to learn about restorative sleep and how you as a leader can help to make a night and day difference for those that you serve. My name is Sarah Brown and I'm the Executive Director of Impera. Impera created the Restorative Sleep Program, and on today's short call, I'm going to do my best to try to help you understand all the learnings in just 20 minutes. Before we get started, I want to share a little bit about who Impera is. Impera is a quality improvement consortium made up of 4 aging service providers located in Minnesota. These are all competitors in the same market share who come together to find practical application of evidence-based research to improve the lives of older adults. The guiding principle of Impera comes from Maya Angelou. She said, "I did then what I knew, and when I knew better, I did better." If you ever hear Impera talk, it's likely that you're going to hear us quote Maya Angelou. We like to do this, and we do this right away because we recognize that you're each out there doing the very best you can to serve the residents with the information you have. I'm so excited, and I recognize that Riverside is committed to implementing the restorative sleep program and understanding how this can make a difference. You see a goldfish here, and this goldfish is jumping out of his bowl. Goldfish can only live as big as their environment allows them to grow. And creating the restorative sleep program is going to give you that catalyst to do things and serve people in ways that you never could before. Sleep is a basic human need, just like oxygen, food, and water. And could you imagine trying to promote quality without providing those things? It's silly. Well, the same thing goes with sleep. You know, every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it achieves, meaning that there's an equation for success and an equation for living well. And that requires us as aging service providers to look at the environments that we're providing and to create a culture of restorative sleep, to look at the size of our bowl and to be willing to make those changes. The other person you'll often hear us quote is Albert Einstein. In order to know better and do better, it's important that we think differently and think more deeply. So that's why I love his quote here, where he talks about really root cause analysis. And he says, if I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on it, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and only 5 minutes on the solution. You see, this is, I think, one of our greatest challenges in this busy, highly regulated industry, to take the time to really understand what is the problem we're trying to solve. With our brains naturally wired to see the problem and fix it, we often jump to a quick solution, and it's not necessarily addressing the problem at hand. And that's what we found when we took a step back and really tried to see what was going on in our communities and realized that one of the greatest problems facing aging services and the traditional practices we have is the lack of regard for restorative consolidated sleep at night. I'd like you to think for a moment about some of the challenges that you're facing. Think specifically about some of the quality indicators that you are tackling year after year. I sometimes think about aging services as whack-a-mole quality improvement, where we have a topic, pick one of them on the slide here, and we'll get a program going. We may even get excellent results in it, and it's because we have a lot of attention on the problem. And then what happens is we sort of say, we figured this out, we take our eyes off of it, and now we start working on a different topic. And all of a sudden, that first one that you worked on starts to pop back up. Do you regularly have challenges? If you do, then stay tuned to this, because what we have identified is an underlying root cause of challenges in your community comes from this lack of regard for restorative sleep, which is a basic human need. The Restorative Sleep Program was created through a Minnesota Department of Health and Human Service grant over 3 years. Within that grant, we had to select quality metrics that would prove or show if we were successful. And those at-risk performance goals were quality of life questions. Can you get up when you want? Can you go to bed when you want? Are you bothered by noise? And are there things to do here that you enjoy? At the end of our program, we had improved those 4 questions positively by 6% and reached our goal. We also reached our goal with quality indicators. We selected 4 quality indicators that we thought would be most influenced by the program, which included pain, behavioral expressions or behaviors, antipsychotics, use of antipsychotics without a diagnosis, and depression At the end of this, we were able to improve that by 13.5% and exceeded our goal there as well. In addition to those two areas, we also looked at how all of our quality indicators were impacted and saw an overall improvement of 2.5% in all quality indicators, as well as at the end of the program, when we compared ourselves to the rest of the state and our total quality improvement, we were performing 11% better than the rest of the state. So before we started the program, the number of residents who were getting consolidated sleep each night was only at 10%. And at the end of our program, we had 80% of residents getting greater than 6 hours of consolidated sleep each night. Yes, you heard that right. 80% of residents sleeping 6 hours or more without any interruption. I'm sure you're thinking, wow, how the heck was that possible? What did you do about continence? What did you do about toileting? And today I'm going to explain to you what are some of the strategies we used to overcome some of those big barriers at night. Restorative sleep is so important for our human body. It helps us maintain balance and homeostasis. You see here a gentleman on a tightrope, and I would like you to think about our sleep this same way. This delicate balance between enough sleep, not too much, not too little, and at the right time has such an influence on how our body systems communicate and talk to each other. These little clocks that he's balancing on here, I want you to think about your circadian rhythm, if you've heard about that, and how our body naturally has different processes we go through all 24 hours of the day. For example, there's a time for rest, a time for activity, a time for eating, a time for fasting. All of our organs need a time to create the functions that keep our body going, but also need time to rest and restore. So when we think about restorative sleep, it's important to note that we can't be expecting our bodies to have the same care plan all 24 hours in the day because our bodies have different needs. There's a science called chronobiology that's really synergizing with sleep science right now, looking at what neurological chemicals are released at what times and how that disruption can happen when we don't get restorative sleep or we get too much sleep during the day and not enough activity. And so they've been able to identify several substances, adenosine, melatonin, cytokines, nitric oxide, and endocannabinoids that can help modulate our sleep-wake cycles. The substances that regulate our body then help keep us in balance, and when we get out of balance with these, we start to see diseases. It should be no surprise that almost every chronic condition that you can think of, you can go out and find literature and research to support that poor sleep either created or exacerbated that condition. Before we talk about strategies, let's talk a little bit about restorative sleep. As you notice, I keep using the word restorative before sleep. For sleep to be restorative, it needs to meet certain criteria. Not all sleep is created equal, meaning you can't just take a couple naps and bunch it all together and count that as good sleep. In fact, that's pretty poor quality sleep, and there's not a lot of value your body would be getting out of it. And in fact, you're likely causing harm to your body by disrupting its natural process for sleep. So for sleep to be restorative, it needs to be one continuous significant sleep period in a 24-hour day, and ideally lasting 6 to 9 hours and occurring at night. Humans are diurnal, meaning that we're meant to be awake and active during the day and sleep at night. It's really important for leaders to understand why sleep needs to be continuous, especially when you are promoting policies, procedures, and operations to support a restorative sleep culture. When we go to sleep at night, we should sleep for 6 to 9 hours, older adults for about 6 to 8 hours, because as we get older, we get more efficient with our sleep. And so when we're asleep for that consolidated time, our body is going to move through different stages of sleep and in different amounts at different times. If we're awoken at all during our nighttime sleep, we don't just get to start where we left off when we go back to sleep. We start at the beginning and the more shallow stages of sleep, stage 1 and 2, that don't promote restoration. Stage 1 and 2 really just prepare our body for a deeper sleep. Stage 3 is the first one I want to highlight here, and what you see here now are some blue boxes that represent your time period in stage 3 sleep while you're asleep at night. What you should notice is earlier on in your sleep, this stage 3 sleep with the bodies in it is occurring in greater amounts and getting less and less throughout the night. During this blue phase, what's happening is you're having cell and tissue repair, cellular regeneration, cellular growth, which is why kids need more sleep, hormone regulation, which tells all of our different body systems and organs when to do what, and immunity is built. During this phase of sleep, this is called REM sleep. And during REM sleep, this is a restorative phase of sleep that helps promote mental health. During REM sleep, our memories are cemented, our emotions are processed, and stress is relieved. When you look at the orange boxes, you see that these occur in greater amounts as the night progresses. So if you want good physical and mental health and get the most benefit for restoration that our body needs and requires for good health and homeostasis, you need to consolidate your sleep. Because again, if you get woken up, you don't just get to start where you were, and you definitely aren't starting in a blue or an orange box. You're starting in that white space of that light, non-restorative sleep that your body is trying to use to prepare yourself for these deeper restorative phases of sleep. Stage 3 sleep for physical healing and REM sleep for psychosocial healing. When you get woken up during your sleep period, that is called sleep fragmentation. Sleep fragmentation is basically interrupted sleep that doesn't allow your body to go through all the stages needed for restorative sleep required for overall health and well-being. When sleep gets interrupted, it's not only not helpful, it becomes harmful. Studies have shown us that disrupting sleep or fragmenting sleep actually can break people down more than withholding sleep altogether. A particular study we learned about at an international sleep conference was where the military had people go through testing where they were tested pre-study for cognitive and physical ability, and then were broken into 3 groups, one with no sleep, one being woken every hour, and one with awakenings every 2 hours. All the groups showed decline, but the group that showed the greatest and quickest amount of cognitive and physical decline was the group that woke every 2 hours. This was baffling because you think about, well, 2 hours is better than 1, but it's not, because what happens when you wake someone at the 2-hour mark is you're waking them during that really restorative sleep, stage 3, or during REM sleep. And what happens when our body gets woken up when it's doing something really important like restorative sleep, it sends the stress signal. And when that stress signal takes over in our body, everything goes haywire and goes into a survival mode. And that is why sleep fragmentation is actually harmful. And this is really important to let it soak in and let ourselves understand this, because for so long we have been taught, we knew then what we knew then, but we have been taught that it is best to round every 2 hours, that we should check on people about every 2 hours, that every 2 hours people need to be offloaded. And that is completely true when we think about daytime stuff, but that is not necessarily true at night. It's actually, if we wake people every 2 hours, we should expect physical and cognitive decline in greater amounts than if they were to be left sleeping. This is why in the sleep program we realized that poor sleep was not just a contributor of falls, but that this interrelationship between all of our quality indicators and fragmented sleep had much deeper roots. Not only have we learned that sleep fragmentation causes all those quality indicator issues, we've also learned that the practices we do to address many of those quality issues further fragment sleep. Because fragmented sleep has such damaging effects on us, it's easy to see now how all the quality issues, quality indicators that we are working towards have a direct impact on restorative sleep, or restorative sleep has a direct impact on them. An example I'd like to share, and which is why the arrows go both directions, is if somebody had a fall, we might put them on more frequent checks, but by putting them on more frequent checks, we're further disrupting their sleep again at night, and then we're creating more physical weakness, which creates greater risk for fall and greater risk for fall with injury. What we really need to be willing to do here is to promote restorative sleep so we stop creating the quality issue, and we need to change our care practices of how we address these quality issues so we don't create the problem of sleep fragmentation. As leaders, we must be willing to look at the truth and to look at what is happening in our buildings. And what you see here is a timeline of us real resident case study that we did in the program. We'll just call her Mabel, but this is a day in the life of Mabel, and each blue dot on this timeline shows the interaction that staff had with her in a 24-hour period. Now, mind you, these are well-intended interactions to provide care to her that we don't realize is actually damaging her. From our perspective, we see a tired resident who's napping a lot, and we assume they're getting a lot of sleep. But from Mabel's perspective, when you look at it in the full day, you see that there is no opportunity to get sleep for more than 2 hours at a time. This is not allowing residents to get that restorative sleep, and what we should expect to see in this equation is an exacerbation of functional and cognitive decline. And that's exactly what we see in nursing homes. It's a vital issue that we must be willing to address in order to provide high quality of care for populations that are already compromised. We can do this by creating a culture of restorative sleep. In order to communicate the message, it's important to keep it simple. There are 2 primary goals for the restorative sleep program. One is purposeful and active engagement during the day, a reason to wake up, a reason to live, and the other one is restful restorative sleep at night, the ability to restore yourself so you can wake up. It's a cycle that repeats itself. And what you want to focus on to get those 2 goals met is to have light, sunlight, bright light during the day, and enough activity. And then at night, you want to have darkness or amber or red light that doesn't interfere with melatonin, and rest. How to create a restorative culture. One thing that you're going to want to focus on is the concept of having a daytime and a nighttime care plan. The saying night and day difference itself recognizes that there is an obvious difference between day and night. We need a night and day difference in the way that we care plan. Nighttime should provide extended periods of uninterrupted sleep. The other thing you are going to want to do is to focus on eliminating the top 10 sleep disturbances. These come from a study that looked at inpatient reports of what disturbs sleep the most. They included noise, light, sleeping environment, napping, medications, elimination needs such as toileting and incontinence, pain, positioning, activity and inactivity or activity at the right time, and diet. The Impera Restorative Sleep Program is founded on the idea that if we can eliminate the top 10 sleep disturbances, we can create a restorative sleep environment. Some of these things impact the nighttime care plan, and some of them impact the daytime care plan. As you look at eliminating the interruptions at night, at first that sounds pretty simple until you start. Right away you're going to realize, oh my goodness, how do we do this and still provide continence care? And how do we do this and still protect skin integrity? And this is where I challenge you to think differently and to give yourself permission to unlearn some of the things that have become second nature and truths in your mind, like the need for positioning to be every 2 hours, end of story, or that leaving somebody an incontinent product is going to cause skin breakdown. There have been significant advancements that have came along that have allowed us to make this progress, and it's created the right timing for us to do this work. The landscape is right at this time as well because of the peer support and regulatory support we're seeing. You have the peer support of us as Impera who have done this work and who have been able to demonstrate successful outcomes. We've also had this program replicated and adapted throughout the country. It's also catching on with our regulators at CMS. In the newest interpretive guidelines and state operations manual, they mentioned sleep 57 times. And looking at that, I was happy to see how they actually even talk about how it could be considered harm if somebody's sleep is disrupted. You know this language is starting to catch on and the value of sleep is. FTAG 561 is also one that can help you to do this work because it focuses on what the resident's rights are and the resident's self-determination. It says the resident has the right to choose activities and schedules, and specifically says including sleep and waking time. It goes on to talk about choices about schedule, ensure that the residents are able to get enough sleep, as sleep is an important contributor to overall health and well-being. There's also support for this work from the National Alliance of Pressure Ulcer Prevention. On their website, they talk about considering lengthening the turning schedule during the night to allow for uninterrupted sleep. Some of the other advancements that have allowed us to do this and do this safely and get to the point where we can allow 80% of people to sleep uninterrupted for at least 6 hours without any negative consequences include better mattresses that have high density foam mattress and allow for better pressure redistribution. We've also had an increase in innovation around the incontinent products we use that have more breathability and better polymers in the products to allow for higher absorbency. Also, we've been able to use technology to better assess sleep and activity. On the topic of nighttime elimination, it's important for us to recognize the body's ideal state is that we should not be creating stool and urine in the middle of the night. You might have had this happen to yourself before, where you're woken in the middle of the night for any particular reason, not because you need to use the bathroom, and then you're laying there and you start to have this famous conversation with yourself. Oh no, I need to get up and go potty. No, I don't. Yes, I do. No, I don't. And who always wins? You always end up getting out of bed and using the bathroom. How many times have you been involved in a situation where the aide swears they just checked on the patient, they didn't need the bathroom, or they were dry, to be found only moments later or minutes later on the floor because of a fall? What we did there is we created a startle response. Anyone who's ever been a parent can probably appreciate that when your child fell asleep, you did not check them every 2 hours to see if they were wet. You waited till they woke up and changed them then. And that goes back to the products have had technical increases so we can allow people to be in products longer. So the first thing we want to do is stop creating that startle response by creating a restorative sleep environment. If that doesn't create enough reduction in elimination needs, then look at some other things like modifying food and fluid intake. What goes in must come out. Looking at functional restoration, physical therapy possibly. Looking at management of comorbid conditions that interfere with elimination patterns like diabetes, heart disease, where you're looking at fluid and fluid redistribution and looking at the use of diuretics. Which brings us to the topic of pharmacological considerations. It's possible that somebody might need to have medications at different time of the day, or that stool and diuretics should be given during the daytime so that voiding and elimination can happen during the day and doesn't interfere with night. Also look at timing of other medications that are creating that nighttime disturbance. Ideally, not passing medications at all at night. And lastly, if you can't eliminate the nighttime voiding issues, then consider use of an overnight product. Just one night of poor sleep can damage the skin barrier function, and if there is an existing skin condition, poor sleep will exacerbate or make that worse. So when you think about our practice of turning and repositioning every 2 hours or even more frequently for wound healing, we're actually not allowing the skin to heal when it needs to at night. I want to highlight a study that was done with different turning intervals using a high-density foam mattress. This study had people turned at 2, 3, and 4-hour intervals. The people in the study were at moderate to high risk of developing pressure ulcers. The study found that there was no difference in the outcomes between the people based on the turning interval. So the million-dollar question then is, how do you get this into a care plan? You need to start with a comprehensive assessment that takes in a lot of different pieces of information. The most important one to start with is the resident's sleeping preference. Do they understand the value of sleep and how fragmented sleep is interfering with their health? Secondly, you can use a tigraphy to show how they're sleeping and also to see if they're moving at night. You want to look at all the risk factors such as mobility, nutrition, again, the sleeping surface, seeing if you have a high-density foam mattress, and then what their toileting needs are. If you're able to create a plan that can address all those things, you're safe then to extend their sleeping period. I'd like to end with a quote from Socrates about change. The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but in building the new. As you go forward, remember that we don't have to keep doing things the way we've always done them. In the short time we've had together, I've tried to pack in as much as I can to help you lead the restorative sleep program. Here's a list of additional references that you could get started on if you want to learn more. And now I'm going to open it up for any questions you have.